camera and you can unmute whenever you want to, and join the conversation. Um, we've got about 6 people here now, so wait a little bit.
Maybe give it a few more minutes.
As soon as we said that, we got a 7th.
There we go.
Welcome, one and all.
John, are you in? Are you?
I am, yeah. I'm actually here in our new Stratagon office. It's kind of still coming together, but got a fun little call room, phone room, whatever you want to call it now. So yeah,
That's
hopefully
nice.
a little bit of a less gloomy day than it's been, but
That
not
is
really
so
looking
true.
like it. And you're in Charlotte as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm in the Plaza Midwood area.
Nice, excellent.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
That's a fun part of town. We were actually just talking the other day, kind of some advice for people moving to town. It's one of the areas I would always suggest, just because I feel like it's so lively. It's got a lot going on. It's a cool
There's
area.
a lot to walk to. So if you're
Mhm.
like bored with one spot, you can just pop around.
Mm-hmm. My brother recommended a new restaurant called Southern Strain. Have you heard of it yet?
It's a brewery.
Oh, it's a brewery. Okay.
It's right across from Harris Teeter. I think they might have food, but they might also have just done a soft opening and are doing the brews.
Yep.
It's cool. It's very modern, hip vibe. High top tables and fun lights and very clean look.
Sounds like my kind of place.
Yeah. I've been loving Cali Soul. And
Yes,
that replaced the there's been a few places there, but the old Penguin,
exactly.
it's owned by the Mama Ricotta's and the Cantina people. Oh my gosh. It's delicious.
I am half Cuban, and that is the first place that I've had, like outside of Miami, I guess I should say, that has had truly good, like authentic Cuban food. So I'm a big
Oh,
fan.
delicious. They have this salad that is just like has this sort of like mango dressing. Oh my gosh. It's so delightful. They have a really good I don't know how they prepare it, but it like marinates overnight and soaks and it's like a pulled pork pineapple rice deliciousness. Um that's my go-to.
I might have to go visit it this weekend now. Oh, let's talk
Right?
about it. It just sounded so good.
For real. Marta and I went. Have you guys been there yet? It's like a speakeasy bar underneath Gastro Lounge in Plaza.
I don't think I even realized there was anywhere down there.
Oh yeah, secret spot.
Having a couple other people join us as well. Welcome, everybody. Reminder, if you'd like to come off of mute, or join on your camera to come join the conversation as we get going here. You're more than welcome to. Hey, Lena, I see you popping in here. Hey, John.
Hi, John. Had double mute on, just to make sure.
No worries.
So now that you guys have made me hungry, we can't go and have a productive meeting.
Go get a snack before we get started. Oh man. And Emily, is this being after, or is this just if you come, you are the only person who you have live to join?
No, it will be recorded and you can access it through the same event page,
Cool.
I believe, after tomorrow. So we will send out a follow-up, but yep, you can find this recording and all past, the past recordings that have been on Bevy from the Charlotte Hug page.
Cool.
All right, you want to get started here?
All right, sounds good. Hey, do you want to kind of introduce the hug, or do you want us to just dive right in?
You're welcome to dive right in, Caitlin. This is take us on this deep dive.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Caitlin Cass-Stevens. I am an inbound marketing specialist at Clearing It Creative. I've been working with HubSpot for almost 10 years now, and based in the Charlotte area and Plaza Midwood. I'm a big lover of inbound sales and marketing, community building, podcasting, all the things. So if you're curious on how to get plugged into the community, whether it's the Charlotte HubSpot user group or any other technology groups, I would love to talk. I am also one of the co-founders of Carolina Women in Tech, a nonprofit based in Charlotte, but serving North and South Carolina. We're actually launching in Raleigh this month. So super excited to bring the community to Raleigh and also a remote market. And I am joined by Marta Adone. She is also an inbound marketing specialist at Clearing It Creative and a member of the Carolina Women in Tech group. So I'm excited to have a partner in crime on this ride here today.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Hey, everyone. I'm Marta, and I'll be kind of moderating this session today with Caitlin. We're going to do a deep dive, like she said, into HubSpot Marketing Hub and talking a little bit more about growth-driven design. So excited for this conversation. Just like a little more background about me, I recently moved to Charlotte in the fall of last year. I do work full-time with Caitlin at Clearing Creative. We're both inbound marketing specialists, like she said, and I'm on the Carolina Women in Tech board as well. All right, so our agenda for today, we're going to start off with just a little bit of background, talking about what is growth-driven design, and then we will get into a specific case study talking through an example of how one of our clients at Clariant did used growth-driven design to do a website refresh, or really it was a whole rebrand when they were when the company went public. So we'll go through this case study. Caitlin will have lots of good examples of how they were able to approach this project, and also some good best practices and takeaways for you on managing continuous improvements, whether that's in your content or your website, really with all of your any kind of inbound marketing projects. We'll talk about using this methodology to do continuous optimizations. And we will try to save some time at the end for some Q&A. I don't think our presentation portion of this will go for the whole hour, so we definitely should have some time for questions at the end.
Also, Marta has done design and website refreshes and historical optimization projects is kind of what we call them internally, HOP projects. It's kind of our acronym.
Love our acronyms.
Yeah. But Marta is very knowledgeable in this as well. So if at any time you guys are confused or you have questions or you want to ask for more specific examples, feel free to unmute yourself or throw a question. Whatever tickles your fancy. We definitely want this to be a conversation. We also want you guys to explore some of this stuff, challenge our ideas or our thoughts or our processes and approaches. We're always kind of living in an agile environment. So if there's something that has worked for you, or if there are any recommendations or examples of ways that you've approached growth-driven design and historical optimization projects, we would love to hear from you too.
Yeah. So we're going to start off with just a quick kind of background or refresher for some of you, whether you're using HubSpot or not, just talking through what is a marketing hub and what is a CMS hub, which are kind of the main core parts of HubSpot that we'll be talking about in this session today. So Marketing Hub is really kind of the backbone of the whole HubSpot platform. It is powered by the CRM system, and it's really an all-in-one marketing automation platform. So you can use it for everything from attracting visitors to a website or your blog, doing converting those visitors into leads through email or chat or forms, landing pages. You can also do a lot of pretty comprehensive reporting with HubSpot. That is something that's actually changed a lot over the last few years, is their reporting library that they have now. It's very robust. There's a huge library of standard reports, as well as the ability to create a lot of custom reports. And I think we can go to the next slide, give a little background on CMS Hub.
So the CMS Hub was something that after the Marketing Hub. HubSpot really planted its seeds and got its roots in the Marketing Hub, comparable to Marketo and Pardot, and even has been compared, like in the early days, to a MailChimp. Just a contact management system, a contact relationship management system, and being able to store data and publish content and do basic amplification like email and social and things like that. Where HubSpot has really started to shine through and differentiate from some of these other marketing platforms is with its content management system, comparable to WordPress, obviously a little bit more robust, but even nowadays with payment capabilities and things of that nature, are being compared to like a Shopify or a BigCommerce in some of these larger content management systems. What I love about HubSpot compared to some of its competitors is its ease of use. The user experience within HubSpot, not only just for the non-technical user, but also the support that comes along with HubSpot. Like, it is next to none. Being able to call, chat, screen share, computer takeover, like whatever it is. Not only are you paying for the dashboard and the platform, but you're also paying for the support. You're paying for the community, and you're also paying for the security. HubSpot prides itself in its ability to keep a secure website with its SSL certificate and the technical integration capabilities. So a lot has evolved within HubSpot, and the CMS is definitely one of those areas. Um, does anybody have any questions about the marketing or the CMS Hub? I just want to make sure, if you're not a savvy HubSpot user, that you're getting all the information that you need. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. All right.
All right, so let's dive in. So why is traditional website design broken? This process of traditional website design it can be a huge time investment, and oftentimes will end up being over budget. The whole mindset of just like, doing the whole design, getting it published, and then a lot of times what ends up happening is you'll just kind of set it and forget it. So you'll do a website redesign and then maybe not touch it again for a few years, or even more than that in some cases, because a lot of times it did take so much time to get it up and running, that you're just, a lot of times it can get frustrating and just feel like it took so long, and you don't even want to go down that path again to do another redesign. Um, with all of those challenges, it's really just not a very efficient process a lot of times, and this is where growth-driven design comes in. So um, the reason that growth-driven design can be a smarter approach for a lot of instances is it really allows you to get basically like a most viable product up and launched sooner rather than later, and lets you kind of approach a website redesign in stages rather than all at once. Um, it can also spread out your investment over time, so you're not having to, say, pay a big chunk of money right up front and then have it still, take a long time. Um, so that allows you to actually stick to your budget a little bit better. And then it's also the really key benefit of growth-driven design approach is that you're able to continuously keep optimizing over time. You're able to like launch and then keep revisiting things or looking at the initial results and making updates and revisions as you go. This approach also can be applied not only for just websites, but also for any other type of branding or design project. Can be used for content marketing, whether it's your blog posts or larger content projects. So we'll kind of talk about each of those different types of examples of optimization projects. Um, and what was the other main point? Um, Really just that a traditional kind of launch and leave it website build is never really going to ascend to the level of performance of a growth driven design website, because the continual optimization and refinement is where you'll really be able to achieve that best performance with your website.
When it comes to growth driven design, it's really built on this agile methodology where you have a strategy, you have the Launchpad website, and then you have the continuous improvements. And part of that strategy and Launchpad website is essentially figuring out what your top priorities are, your high impact website pages, and identifying ways that you can um, either optimize and update those website pages, or if you're starting from scratch, actually going through and creating the content, getting the designs, going through the development process, going through the QA process, and being able to publish. And what I really love about HubSpot's CMS right now is their sandbox capabilities, being able to actually set up a lot of these pages, getting the designs approved and getting them developed into HubSpot without actually having to publish the website page if you're wanting to try and go back and make adjustments, but still be able to test in that sandbox. That's something that has been updated and is new throughout the past couple of years. And I would also say that it was also maybe one of our biggest challenges in navigating all the features and capabilities that the CMS had to offer. But when it comes to growth driven design, rather than sort of this set it and forget it mentality, you're doing whatever you have to do, like Marta said, to get that minimum viable product, to be able to launch your website, give your ideal target audience the information they need in order to make a buying decision, and then going back after you publish and continuing to publish new pages. So not letting the bulging sitemap delay your launch and delay optimal results. Any questions around growth driven design or traditional website design?
Hey, Caitlin, is there anything in the project management aspect of this that gives you some sort of structure to work with?
Um, so I mean, I guess it really depends whether you're an agency or whether you're an in-house team, and how your standard operating procedures are structured. Um, just from like a general project management standpoint, um, a lot of times I see teams overcomplicating things with technology before actually getting their process and their priorities and all of that stuff identified manually. And it sounds old school, but I mean, even just something as simple as like having a spreadsheet as a scratch pad to kind of figure out like who's on first, and like whose roles and responsibilities is it to create the outlines, get the scopes approved, give the writers the information that they need, go through the editing process, getting client approval, going through the internal approval process, getting the designs, making design recommendations. You may have a Swiss Army knife internally, but we all have always found that for each stage of the website creation process, if you can have two people on that, so that you have somebody who's like looking at it a ton, and then you have somebody who has a keen eye for editing, what like a word nerd. If you have somebody who can do like the grammar and the spelling and that kind of stuff, and then you have somebody who is a little bit more like a user experience person, a customer experience person, somebody who has a keen design eye, maybe even a little bit of a development background to even know what is possible for functionality. So what we have, at least at Clarion Creative, is we have a director of content who works with the writers, and then the writer and the director of content work directly with the inbound marketing specialist. Specialist is more or less the conductor. Um, Oftentimes we'll see in-house, like there might be a marketing manager, or there might be a CMO, or there might be a demand generation specialist who we can work with on the client side to make sure that we're hitting all of that key messaging. We're not missing any key contextual points, maybe things that have changed internally. So the more that we can have stakeholders involved on the sales and service side as a part of that Q&A process and that approval process, I think that does really help. But the inbound marketing specialist not being the wearer of every single hat, I think helps things move a lot smoother, because then you have the inbound marketing specialist is kind of juggling a lot of balls, dealing with a lot of different people, making sure that they're removing any impediments, kind of like a scrum master in a way. Whereas like the writer and the content director can zero in on the words and the messaging and the structure. And then whether it's the inbound marketing specialist, or if you have a designer or a developer in house who can, one is like the one who's in the trenches doing the work, and then there's somebody also overseeing and maybe catching any glitches or any issues, or um, any opportunities. But the inbound marketing specialist or the marketing manager, whoever is like leading and owning that initiative, needs to really have a good handle on the overall inbound sales and marketing strategy, understand the strategic direction of the company and the goals of what's going on, and really kind of getting that, um, you know, all of that clearly identified from the get-go, and then having checkpoints along the way to make sure that we're staying on track with the initial intent of the project. Otherwise, you start kind of getting off the rails.
Yeah.
Um, so those sprints and those phases and those checkpoints can be really helpful from a project management standpoint. But having all of that stuff, kind of going back to what you asked, from like what do you do, is get to basics, manually be able to identify and understand what that process looks like, and then implement that into whatever project management tool that you're using to fit that operating procedure. Because a lot of times people will try and adapt their thing to the tool.
Yeah.
And so we've used ClickUp, and it has worked really well for us.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answered your question, or
It
if I
does.
went
Thank
down
you.
a rabbit
That's
hole.
good. Yeah, it's good answer. Good to know we don't have to retool our project management methodology just to fit this platform. So good to know.
What tool are you using?
We're mostly, Asana with, just a lot of when it's necessary, more detail with spreadsheets and documents.
Sure. Yeah, and we used ClickUp internally, but then the client that we're going to be talking about today, because we work with 5 or 6 different vendors supporting the marketing department, and then we also have internal departments that we're working with, we ended up creating a Trello instance so
Okay.
that we could have transparency across departments and across stakeholders and all of that kind of stuff, without having to add all of those people to our own agency project management
Yep.
system. So, I mean, keeping it simple, not overcomplicating things, and then having a clear place where the minutia is, whether that's a project brief, or whether that is a spreadsheet, or a combination of the two, just as long as things are linking to each other, talking to each other, and everybody's on the same page.
Perfect.
Those are the most important things.
Good answer. Thank you so much.
Sure, yeah, no problem. All right, so we're going to do a poll question. In the chat, if you can just put whether or not you've participated in a website redesign project. And if you have, then what was your role in that project? Were you a designer? Were you a writer? Were you a manager, facilitator of the project? Were you a fly on the wall observing? Were you a stakeholder, helping making the buying decisions, but kind of staying back in the wings on the execution? Looks like somebody has done all of the things. Some have assisted. Some have never done that. Some being an account manager. Awesome. Awesome. Sold a few. Well, I get that. Sometimes, actually, I've seen agencies do really well where if you have a dedicated salesperson on your team, those are sometimes the best people to have um, be sort of an objective perspective, take a look at a particular page, or have them log into the website right from the homepage, click around the navigation, kind of see how they're using it. It's a nice free user testing approach. If you don't work in the office with that person, or if you don't have some objective perspectives, just having somebody jump on Loom or Zoom and do a screen share, and just watching them use the website and then asking some general questions to get some feedback on making sure the message is clear. There's not too many clicks to get to the thing that you're trying to accomplish, and there's clear pathways identified. I think that can be really helpful. All right, let's talk about ClearSale.
Yes, let's. So, um, Caitlin, we wanted to just have you give us a little bit more background around ClearSale, your client, and just about the company, what led them to needing to redesign their website, and kind of what problems they were trying to solve.
Sure. So I've been working with ClearSale since 2019 when I started at Clariant Creative. But Clariant Creative has been working with ClearSale since 2016. What had happened is that their PR company, who they were working with, um, recognized a need for more content, and a way to manage all of the things, and they had a relationship with our CEO, Beth Carter, and reached out to Beth and said, "Hey, we think that this organization is a great fit for HubSpot, also a great fit for inbound sales and marketing. PR is our jam, media is our jam, but you're the inbound experts." And so that's how Clariant Creative was bought in. Um, ClearSale is a fraud prevention and protection software as a service. So essentially, how it works is, if you're a small business, there's basically like a plugin or an integration that you can connect to your e-commerce website, and you can have support on filtering out false declines, chargebacks, basically mitigating fraud risk. And what is unique about ClearSale is there is a whole staff of business analysts, data scientists who are also going back and not just like setting it, forgetting it, and letting the IA do the work, but there is a layer of human analysts who is going in and checking, and making sure that your approve lists and your deny lists are up to snuff, that you're not approving or disapproving the wrong buyers. Um, and for larger enterprise corporations, like Walmart or Timex or um, uh, Under Armour, it's more of an augmentation experience. So there's likely an in-house fraud team at these companies, and ClearSale is supporting the bandwidth of the staff and not only creating the human capital, but also the perspective of all the other e-commerce clients and patterns and fraud behaviors and buyers within their system. So the data pool is immense compared to a lot of the competitors. Um, so, um, ClearSale was a private company started in Brazil, came to the States and also Mexico, and went public in Brazil last year. So, with this um, business growth came a rebrand and a fresh perspective on the brand, and the intention of not being known as this Brazilian based company, but being known as this worldwide e commerce industry leader. And so going from you can kind of see the logo that we were working with into this more modern and sleek feel. Um, so let's see. Oh, um, I think the biggest challenge that we faced after going public, we knew it was coming, but we didn't exactly know when the shoe was going to drop. And so we were told, hey, once we get the green light, then we have about 8 weeks to be able to rebrand the website and relaunch with the new brand and a media release and all this stuff. So it was sort of like we had uh, just enough of a runway to be able to get our high impact pages off the ground, um, and have a big splash and a ton of traffic to our website and kind of mitigating all of that traffic. So, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people in production, many steps involved. And so, when I found out about not only having to rebrand a website, but having to rebrand a website in multiple languages, I knew that I needed to be very organized, and I knew that I needed to get my team on board with how we wanted to tackle this big project. And this is not a website with um, minimal pages. Like, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of pages. Um, Within this website. So our objective was to figure out how to thrive in chaos while growing and scaling this website. And so rather than treating it as a website redesign project, I really tackled it as a historical optimization project. And I really tried to just like eat one elephant at a time. So we started with reviewing all of the high impact pages, um, and identifying what our priorities were, how important it was to update the copy versus the design or just the template, if any of the forms needed to be refreshed, looking at like our existing content and being able to get a baseline for what our goals and KPIs should be. And also understanding what the definition of success was from the stakeholders at ClearSale, but also understanding what the definition of success looked like for our sales, marketing, and service departments. Um, so that was really step one, and in terms of being able to thrive in chaos, was getting everybody on the same page and mapping all of that out. But that had to be done really quickly, so we did a lot of it in phases by ranking all of the pages. We pulled a screaming frog report so we could see what all the URLs were, and then we started to group and categorize the pages and prioritize the pages. So we did that in a few different ways. We had some high, medium, low, 1, 2, 3, and then we had, main navigational website pages, and then we had, more interior type pages, landing pages, and blog posts. What's interesting is that we had about a dozen blog posts that were getting us a tremendous amount of traffic. Like, since I've been working with ClearSale, these have always been very high performing pages. And so we realized that we were getting a ton of traffic, but it wasn't necessarily qualified traffic. So we acknowledged that we needed to roll that into some of our high impact pages to make sure that we were directing traffic appropriately within the website after it launched. So people weren't coming to this page, 1,000 people weren't coming to the page every month, and it was in the old brand because it was a blog post. So we were thoughtful about how we identified which pages to work on first, second, and third.
Caitlin, I just wanted to jump in real quick. With that approach of how you went about prioritizing what pages to focus on first, one of my clients had a similar project last year of wanting to redesign the website, and while we were under such a tight time constraint to get it launched, we did have to go through a similar exercise of okay, this website has hundreds of pages, that's not feasible to necessarily tackle all at one time, feasible or necessary. So another thing that we did that was helpful, aside from just looking at the highest trafficked pages, was also where did we want people to be going, and kind of rearranging the nav a little bit to better reflect that. So yes, obviously the homepage and the contact us page and some blog posts had a lot of traffic, and we want to make sure that those we were able to touch all of the branding consistent across all of those. But we really wanted to focus people on also pricing and their main services pages. So we focused most of our energy on getting those as um, as good as we wanted them to be, rather than spending more time on all of the different sub service pages or other sub pages in the nav that weren't getting much traffic and weren't really high converting pages either. So that's just kind of another way to help prioritize what to focus on first, and then what you can maybe put in a sandbox for later to get to updating after you launch the new site.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the benefit of getting the heads up of hey, this is coming down the pike, we don't necessarily know when, is we did give ourselves an opportunity to do a content audit and really take our time with what blog posts that we wanted to focus on, what landing pages we wanted to focus on. We knew that we had to do something with a lot of the navigational pages, and so any way that we could rework some of the messaging and content in advance, or refresh any of the CTAs, start kind of doing some of the preliminary work to set us up for success. I actually wanted to show you guys an example of, let me see here. So this is one of the bulging spreadsheets that came up when we were just kind of starting the process of identifying blogs and pages, and this ultimately ended up going into translating into Trello and ClickUp, our project management tool. So anything that was pre-designed was put in ClickUp first from the agency perspective, and then once it was ready for client approval, then we moved it into Trello on the client side and the client perspective and the client's vendors perspective. So that was kind of the order of operations. But what I really liked about this in particular is we got all of the vendors to send over their wish list, and then we were able to consolidate all the insights or all the information and be able to look at any of the common denominators, and be able to make some game time decisions between the writing team, the design and the development team, and the sales and service teams. So we basically had leads from each of the teams come together and make some strategic decisions, and then we made our final recommendations and got those approved. So that's how we were able to move really quickly. But thinking about the optimization type, whether it just needed a technical optimization or a full revamp, the level of priority, making sure that we were getting on the same page about the priority, any kind of content requirements, any kind of reviews, designs, SEO, and then client approval. I thought that was really helpful spreadsheet that our design developer sent over when it came to the blog posts. But also something that we did early on, even prior to the website launch beginning, is we got really clear about what our definitions were for how to right size each of our efforts. So different pages had different levels of needs and requirements. And we base that on a few things. Obviously, updating the copy and making sure everything was fitting SEO best practices, but also the word count and the design complexities. So we basically had level 1, 2, and 3. Level 4 was inclusive of video. So if we had any video production requirements, then that took us to kind of a next level. And then we also kind of laid out the roles and responsibilities of each of the main people in production on the project. So I thought this was really helpful when we were getting started with trying to figure out our roles and responsibilities and our priorities. Any questions about that?
Hey, Kaylin, did you eliminate? I saw the category of struck. Did you actually archive or strike some pages just to try and keep the site speedy?
So we did some consolidation of pages. Actually in the process of now, this is kind of stepping a little bit ahead, but as far as continuous improvements go, we identified which pages that we could consolidate. So we took blogs to like 3 blogs and turned it into what we call a pillar post, which is like kind of a hybrid between a blog and a pillar page. Less word copy, but still more design features, more interactive, very research based. Oftentimes a little bit more full funnel of an experience and opportunities for conversion, because what we found is that we had blog posts that were published in like 2016, 27, 2018, and then became not irrelevant, but a need for continuous improvements based on the pandemic, based on the industry, based on the brand's approach and service offerings. And so we were able to cherry pick the bottom and middle of the funnel blog posts that were going to help enable sales and do some consolidation so that not only it was continuing to help us build our domain authority and improve our site speed, but it also made for a better sales experience when needing to provide links about different topics that prospects and clients were asking about in the process. So yes, there was definitely a strike list.
Okay, good. I'm assuming the Screaming Frog report was critical to not losing some critical backlinks, right?
Actually, I think SEMrush was more helpful for that. So we
Okay.
did use Screaming Frog for our initial reports and to kind of help us get a baseline for those spreadsheets. But when it came to like um, removing errors, eliminating technical difficulties, identifying high impact backlinks and things like that. We actually worked with our media team to help remedy any of those external links. And then we worked with our SEO team to either set up any redirects or create new backlinks for the consolidated pages or the improved pages. So I think that might be a multi approach answer, but
Yes, definitely.
a little
Yeah,
bit of
it's
everything.
quite a complex tackling of a project area. It's impressive.
It was a labor of love. Still is a labor of love. Um, so another thing that has been really helpful is over the past few years in working with this team is refining how we're using creative briefs, not only at the beginning of the project and getting scopes approved and getting all of the vendors and teammate members on the same page, but it's also been really helpful when we're retroing at the end of the project. So when it comes to this website design, but also when it comes to any recurring campaigns. So we've been doing original research for the past, we're going on our 3rd year now. And so being able to look at the creative brief from 1.0 to 2.0 and then planning for 3.0, it's helped us go back to see like what worked, what didn't work, where did we miss, what went well. What do we need to bring back around? What do we need to pitch all together? And so it definitely, having this creative brief and having this structure not only helps us identify what needs to be improved and what's working and what's not working, but again, it helps us all get on the same page, and it helps us go back and be able to remember all of the finer details of the project. When you're in an agency or when you're in an in-house marketing team and things are going 50 million miles an hour, it's hard to keep all that stuck in your noggin. So this creative brief really, we ended up using Google Docs for it. Some people like to use other tools, but Google Drive was the way that the client wanted to be able to collaborate live time. I will say that we did end up downloading the briefs at different stages and saving them as like V1, V1A, V2 as we were making iterations throughout the project, just so that we could go back and kind of see what changed or what evolved over time. Whereas we could do that with the version history, but we were able to just keep tabs and uh, a little bit of structure to adjustments along the way. So hopefully that is helpful. I also do link these briefs up. We have for like our website, we have we call it simple marketing stuff that needs fixing. And so on a monthly basis, it's just like a running Google Doc, broken down by month. And it's like, what is the thing that needs to be fixed? Who provided the request? And what is the status of it? And myself and our design coordinator, every month we go through and make these updates if it's not urgent. But it's just linked up right into the Slack channel, so anybody on the team can access it at any time and put in requests. But it also doesn't bog down our designer with if we have urgent and important requests. It's just something that like, hey, this picture needs to be fixed, or this thing needs to be updated, or there's a misspelling on this graphic, or something that's like very minor. But um, uh, it allowed us to kind of streamline some of those continuous improvements along the way. After we even launched the website, having like a running QA doc with like round 1, round 2, round 3. And kind of breaking things down, and then being able to use Slack and being able to use Trello and ClickUp, to be able to kind of connect all the things, was really really helpful. Any other questions on our initial approach? Some of the other kind of phases to this project, obviously the high impact pages came first, but then the next phase was looking at the landing pages, the conversion paths, any high visibility CTAs, so using HubSpot's CTA analyzation tool and the landing page analytics tool, blog analytics tool, kind of going into each of those sections, and seeing that any kind of buttons and assets files that we needed to refresh right away. And then uh, trying to get that Launchpad website to go live with the understanding that whatever we couldn't get to would be our first priority for continuous improvements. And then whatever came up but was something that we couldn't tackle, we set it in the parking lot, and we pulled it back around when we were evaluating what our continuous improvements were and the timing in which we were doing that. So we generally operate on a quarterly schedule, and then we prioritize by month. So if something doesn't get done in month 1, then as long as we're on track to hit it by the end of the quarter, then it allows us with a little bit more flexibility, particularly with like quality of life and a lot of different teams and moving parts and people and schedules and things like that. We had some hard deadlines, but when it came to continuous improvements, we were able to be a little bit more flexible and agile with what we were able to complete within a sprint and what needed to move to another sprint. So going back to like what was being edited out, what was being scratched, or what was being pulled to the surface, that allowed us to reevaluate and pivot quickly. All right.
So, Caitlin, we've got about 10 minutes left. I feel like we've kind of talked through these two questions of like what challenges did you face and how are you managing continuous improvements. Unless you might have a little bit more to add about like how you're doing this today. But I did want to make sure we get to the next slide on the historical optimization 5-step process that you could use to apply to any project, really, whether it's big or small. So I don't know, what do you think would be the best use of the rest of the time?
How about I talk a little bit about this process
Yeah.
and then I can also share an example of um, diving into a specific historical optimization project example because we're talking about websites and this big rebrand project, but I think it's also important for teams big and small to be able to know that you can apply this to a campaign, you can apply this to a blog post, you can apply this to a conversion path. um, so I think maybe kind of seeing it in action could be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I've talked a lot about how we've evaluated the website and how to prioritize those pages. I've talked a little bit about using a creative brief and spreadsheets to be able to document and plan for historical optimization projects. The next piece is activating. So, actually taking those documentations and putting it into a project management plan tool. Some clients who are not as tech savvy are like, I just want a spreadsheet with like, okay, am I responsible for this? When is it due? And know that if I don't get it back to you within 24 hours, that I need a reminder. Like setting expectations, setting boundaries. I think something that, at least from the inbound marketing specialist standpoint, it takes a lot of discernment for you to be able to decide what is actually urgent and important versus what somebody else's emergency is. And so when you're going through any kind of growth driven design project, being able to like take a step back, evaluate the situation, maybe get another perspective, to be able to either accept the request or push back or reset expectations and boundaries. Communication is so important when it comes to um, these these growth driven design projects, these historical optimization projects. Because things can get lost in the sauce. There can be a lot of misunderstanding. Communicating from a strategy perspective to a writer perspective to a design to a development to a stakeholder perspective, there's a lot of in between and gray area that can come through. And so the like over communicating is always a better approach, in my opinion, than making assumptions or people pleasing. I've seen a lot of people who are working on the production side get burnt out because they have a hard time saying no. But if you're not saying no to the things that aren't actually urgent and important, then you could be either delaying the project to be able to get that MVP, or you could be setting yourself to go up over budget. So being able to have the discernment and the confidence to be able to say, that's a great request. Let me take a minute and check with my team, rather than just automatically saying yes and then behind the scenes trying to figure out how to do that thing. Allowing yourself the space and grace to figure it out and make a quality decision versus making a decision under pressure. So activation is really about communication, documentation, and accountability. Being able to follow up when things aren't happening, but doing it in a way that is very respectful. I like to use Slack and just like, hey, what's the status of this? Can you give me an update? Sometimes I find that the formality of putting some of that communications in a project management tool can make individuals feel put on the spot. So if you can reach out to, if there's a particular person working on a project and maybe there's an issue or an impediment or delay, checking with that person first and kind of understanding what's going on, and then being able to just put a note of the status objectively in the project management tool can be a way to kind of eliminate some of the strife or personal. Sometimes we take things personal when someone's like grilling us about something or asking questions or giving feedback. And so it allows facts over feelings to happen, but doing it in a way that is really personal, and not putting anybody in the spotlight. Not everybody appreciates that. So the next step is analyzing. And that's, after you've activated, having a really clear runway to check on results. Depending on the project, it could be a week, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever are your goals and expectations that you're setting at the beginning of the project, making sure that you're putting analyzing benchmarkers along with that, just so that you can go ahead and set up tasks and reminders to circle back, and see how things are doing. And then being able to retro and regroup. I think that's really important. And things can always be continuously improved. You can always add multimedia. You can always update the graphics and the CTAs. You can always improve the messaging and add more content. One of the biggest questions I get about historical optimization projects is at what point are you able to republish with a new date, and like what warrants republishing, especially in blog posts. You're like, how do I know if I should just like update it or republish it? And I like to use the rule of thumb of a 30% update, 30% or more update. So 30% more content, 30% more graphics or multimedia, 30% more effort. If you can get to that point, then that's usually a good threshold for being able to actually republish with a new date. Any questions about this process?
Hey, Caitlin, is Activate where you would manage scope creep?
Absolutely. Activate is like the full scale production. So that's where those sprints come into play. That's where regrouping with the department leads or the project leads or whoever's involved in the project, having like a weekly status or a bi-weekly status to make sure everybody's on the same page. There are not any impediments and we're not going over scope. A lot of times those high impact pages are like the about page or the how it works page or something that is like a little bit more complex and layered. Those are usually the ones that can go off the rails the quickest.
Yep.
So, and even being able to identify that, and kind of prevent that and be proactive about that, of like, hey, these are the ones that are our highest priorities. These are also the ones that people have the most opinions on. So we need to either plan for that or we need to know what is enough. Any other questions? I think we've talked a lot about these priorities. We do have some resources for you, as we're doing content audits and website refreshes and things like that. We're always looking for ways to be able to create pillar pages and topic clusters. One of the I don't want to say the easiest, but low hanging fruit opportunities is turning ebooks and guides into pillar pages. So taking these non-indexable pieces of content and making them an indexable page. The consolidating blog posts and turning them into those pillar posts or those pillar pages, and figuring out how to group and cluster those content elements together, taking those sales pages that you have, and identifying what other pages on your website are supporting those pages and making sure you've got a good linking strategy, and CTAs built in there and things like that. That's definitely something that we've taken to in 2022 and even in the past couple of years. There is a growth-driven design certification that's free through HubSpot Academy, and there's also a Slack community, and you can just go to growthdrivendesign.com/Slack.
All right. Yeah, we're just, look at that, exactly on time. So we just have a couple of other resources. Oh, I was just going to say, if you are not subscribed to HubSpot's quarterly update emails, definitely recommend doing that, as well as checking out the product updates landing page, which is always there, and they keep that updated. You can access that right from the link. That's the screenshot on the screen right from within your HubSpot portal. And also feel free to reach out to any of us who are we're presenting or speaking today. And don't forget to also join the different Charlotte Hug social groups. I'm going to put in the chat right now the link to the Slack group as well as the LinkedIn group. If you're not a part of those, feel free to request to join either or both of those. And then we do have a couple of upcoming events. So they will be, the next 2 months will be similar to this one, where we'll do a deep dive in May. It will be about talking about Sales Hub with William. And then in June, we'll dive a little deeper into service. Looking forward to those, and you can use the QR codes there to go to the event registration pages. And I believe they're at the same time as this one, 11:30 to 12:30 Eastern.
Thanks so much, Caitlin and Marta. I'll add a quick one to that. We actually just confirmed Jay Schwedelson. You may have heard or seen his presentations from Inbound. He speaks pretty heavily on email performance, and we have confirmed him for the end of April. So look for that registration page going live this week, April 27th. It will be Wednesday. So awesome.
All right. I can stick around for a few minutes if anybody has specific questions that you wanted to ask. Also, if you wanted to schedule time with Marta or I or both of us to talk about your project and growth-driven design, or want to take a look at some of our templates or spreadsheets, then feel free to reach out to us directly. We're also on LinkedIn. So
Caitlin, I'll take you up on a sidebar comment question if you have a few
yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Anybody who wants to drop off out of boredom, feel free. Hey, you mentioned CMS. At what point do you let a client make their own content updates versus doing your own?
I think it depends on, number one, their level of expertise. Number two, the transparency and communication. Like, for example, a client, this ClearSale client, where we have a developer and a designer that we work with. And so to be able to discern at what point I make the edits versus at what point I send them the edits, and how I'm sending them those requests. Just like going back to that communication of like, hey, I want to make this adjustment. Do you have the bandwidth for it? Can I do it? Kind of figuring that out. If it's a specific client, I would say just making sure that they're letting you know, hey, this is something that we're doing, because it might be important for you to understand, like, hey, we made a messaging change, or hey, there is a new data point that we wanted to make sure was on this page. So even if you are allowing them to do it, they do have the capabilities or the certification or the chops to be able to go in and physically do it. I think making sure that you're setting the expectation that they're communicating that adjustment just as you would if you were making the adjustment on their website.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, it's really just comes down to communication of making sure you know who is doing it, because I've run into that before where they might make a request and it might be that they could do it, but they don't want to interfere if you are like still in the middle of working on a page. So you just want to make sure, like, if you like, make sure you're letting them know, oh, hey, it's totally fine now at this point if you want to just go in and make any edits, rather than going through the process of like emailing me the edits and then I have to go tell the designer. So if they are comfortable, I would say, like, let them do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Let them feed themselves.
Totally.
Well, good stuff. Thank you so much for your advice and insights. It's really good stuff.
Yeah. Was there
Thanks for
anything
joining.
that like stood out to you, or anything like that we could go deeper into at another event? Or
I was going to
curious?
go down a rabbit hole about analytics and UTMs and all that, and I thought maybe another time, another topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to shoot me an email, I can always do like a screen share video for you. Or if you wanted to just shoot me a message and we can throw something on the calendar, happy to talk about. I will talk to you about analytics all day.
We'll get our propeller beanies out and spin them.
Let's do it.
What's a good email for you?
Here.
Okay, cool. That's very high tech.
Yeah.
Are you guys both
Um,
at the same agency?
We are.
What's the name of it?
It's called
Uh,
Clariant Creative.
Well, it'll be in your email, won't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I can solve that.
Yeah, we have so
Fantastic.
many good resources. We're the content machines, so there
Nice.
should be a lot to play around with there. Awesome. All right,
Yeah.
It's weird. It's not letting
Stephen
me
or
click on your.
Julie.
I'm trying to paste your email out of the chat, and it's there. It goes. Finally, shoot.
Oh,
It was like
got it.
it was staying as a little finger, but it was finally letting me drag and drop.
Oh no,
Yep.
fat fingering
Awesome. I'll spam you
Julie
later.
or
Thank you.
Stephen, you're welcome. Julie or Stephen, do you guys have any questions or thoughts or anything you wanted to leave with us today? No pressure.
I was just hanging out. I got on late, so just seeing what's what.
Yeah, and this recording should be available on the same event link tomorrow. So if you wanted to catch the first half, then you could do that.
Sounds good. Thanks. Appreciate it. It's nice to see you, Caitlin.
No problem.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks. You too.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.